Welcome back. The South African Revenue Services says it's making progress in the fight against transfer pricing. Transfer pricing is legal in some cases, but SARS says it's often translated into aggressive tax dodging by companies. Transfer pricing, known as profit shifting, is a common phenomenon globally, whereby multinational companies move large sums of cash from high tax areas in which they operate to low tax jurisdictions where they also have a presence. They can do this, for instance, by selling goods at cut prices to associates in lower tax countries. So taxable profits are reduced in the high tax areas and inflated in the low tax areas where the goods are finally sold. Or the company can reduce tax by having a subsidiary in a low tax jurisdiction sell its goods to a subsidiary in a high tax area at a high price. Profit shifting is said to be rife in South Africa, in the mining industry in particular, and it's said to be robbing the country of billions of rand every year in lost tax revenue. There have been calls in Parliament for transfer pricing to be banned outright, but SARS says that cannot be done. Instead, it says it's focusing on clamping down on the abuse of profit shifting. Well, to discuss, we're joined by Keith Engel from the SA Institute of Tax Professionals. He's live from our studio in Pretoria. Good evening to you, Keith. Is it possible to quantify the losses, how much we're losing as a country in tax every year?
Well, I don't know if it's possible to quantify. It's hard to know how much people are actually avoiding or cheating you. So to actually quantify what you don't know is impossible. But there is a fair amount of losses, and it can run into the billions.
Our miners have been accused in particular. Do you think they're the main culprits? You can name anyone you believe should be named and shamed, or just tell us exactly what they are believed to be doing.
Well, to be fair, I don't think the whole mining industry is engaged in transfer pricing, but there are probably a few culprits, as every industry has, that are more aggressive than others. And those few, which the SARS is aware of some of them, do cost quite a bit of money. But when they cost a lot. So, and in terms of other industries, some industries are more susceptible than others. Mining in Africa tends to be more of a problem.
So taxes in South Africa are seen as relatively high, is that correct? So they're selling the goods here at low prices, keeping the profits low in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, in South Africa's rate, 30%, is not extreme. It's actually lower than most African countries. But there's always a place you can go to where you're going to find a lower rate. And you look to shift the money to a low tax jurisdiction where they have a 0 rate or a 5% rate. And those are typically in small countries. It could be Mauritius, it could be Switzerland, Luxembourg, to name a few.
Keith, SARS says it cannot be outlawed because there are some cases where I've heard it is justified, instances maybe where a lot of the marketing for the final goods is happening abroad. Can you outline justifiable instances?
Well, the thing is, what you're asking companies to determine is a price. And if you're a global company and you own one company and you own another company and they sell a price between the two, how do you outlaw? How do you fix a price? That's socialism. As a matter of fact, it's just impossible to set prices legally. You could only do it with facts. So can you force a markup?
Do you agree then with the approach that we don't outlaw transfer pricing, but we look more closely at each case, which seems to be the way that SARS is going?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, the price, you can't be outlawed. So the thing is, the only thing you can do is review the prices to see if they're reasonable. Okay.
Keith, I think you're hearing some interference. Just listen to my voice. I'd like to ask you, is transfer pricing in South Africa possibly a disincentive to beneficiating here, to manufacturing here, because they don't want to undercut finished goods, as it were?
Well, I mean, there's a difference between beneficiation and transfer pricing. The more value you add in South Africa, the more the tax is going to be in South Africa. So yes, if the tax in South Africa is high, you have less of incentive to add value here. But transfer pricing isn't that. Transfer pricing is where you add the value in South Africa, and through clever lawyering, you shift the income abroad. So it shouldn't be a disincentive to beneficiation.
On the other hand, if we clamp down too hard. It looks like SARS's approach is right, and they're looking at abuse cases only. But if we clamp down very hard, is that a disincentive to invest in South Africa?
It is only a disincentive if they hit the wrong targets. So if they get the generally abusive cases where the prices are false, then that's fair. The problem is if people start assuming that mining houses and other people are charging a price which is reasonable and saying it's not reasonable. So as long as SARS takes a commercial approach and is fair with taxpayers, there's not a disincentive. The question is, it's difficult for revenue authorities to determine what a genuine price is, and that's the problem globally.
And that's going to be the problem for SARS. Bridget Khadebe has said that this is sabotaging BEE miners. The small miners can't compete because presumably they only operate in South Africa. Do you think it's that serious?
I don't think it's that serious, because usually most of the BEE deals, most of them are part of larger mining companies. So I don't believe it's undermining BEE. No, I don't think it's relevant. It can be, it sets aside mining in other places. If you have a wholly domestic company and it doesn't have the advantage a global company has, then yes, it will put them at competitive disadvantage, BEE or otherwise.
Keith, where's this going? Presumably the final solution has to be global. We know that Google, Amazon, Starbucks, others are all gearing their operations to low tax havens, which is a disadvantage to any country that wants to charge tax. It's costing countries billions, but surely everybody has to be on board.
That's right, and I think that's why the OECD and others are trying to have a global solution. And there's a whole bunch of global options that are being offered. The problem is it's very hard for everybody to act in unison, because many countries say they don't want to have transfer pricing, but then they lower their taxes in order to encourage others to come to their jurisdiction. So people play a two-parted game, and once countries do that, it's hard to have a global solution. But I think the effort right now is toward a global solution. And to be fair, I think that many companies have taken a far more conservative position in the last 2-3 years as a result of the global effort. So things are improving.
And I think tax dodging will be a big theme this year. Thank you so much. Keith Engel from the SA Institute of Tax Professionals.